We're back out here once again, and today I've got some simple and easy tips that will help you catch more bass, not just in the fall, but all year long. Stick around, you don't want to miss this one.
There we go, I got one. Feels pretty good too. There we go, come on, stay with it. Stay with me. Stay with me. There we go.
And here is this video's featured comment. Congratulations! If you would like to have a chance to have your comment featured in an upcoming video, all you've got to do is leave a comment. And now, on with the video. Welcome back to Lowbrow Fishing. And here recently we've had a lot of new viewers on the channel. And a lot of these new viewers are novice bass anglers just now getting their feet wet with bass fishing. And I try to answer the questions that they have as best that I can. But I wanted to put this video together to kind of address a bunch of those questions and kind of lump them together. But this video is not just for novice anglers. Intermediate as well as advanced anglers will get a lot from this video. And of course, this is going to be about jigs. Now, before you click away, there's a lot of reasons why guys have a hard time catching a fish with a jig, and we're going to address that. We're going to break it down. We're going to keep it super simple. We're going to get rid of all the noise and just focus on what you absolutely have to have and what you absolutely need to do to be a successful jig fisherman. And that's really the heart of it, is it's getting rid of all the extra and just focusing on the core of what actually works. Now, before we get started, I want to thank everyone who stopped by my shop over at diamondbackbaits.myshopify.com and purchased some jigs. I really can't thank you enough. It's a great way to support the channel. And we've got a great selection of jigs. This guy right here is one of them. And this is a casting jig in that dusk dark color. This has been one of the great sellers. And right now we're having a 25% off sale. So it lasts until the 17th, so hop on over there. It's going to be gone soon. It's going to be 25% off of your order. And again, I just want to thank everyone for the continued support. The link's going to be in the description and in the pinned comment below. Now, when it comes to jigs, what are we talking about? Well, pretty much any type of hook that's got a weight molded to it can be a jig, right? We've got tube jigs, we've got swim bait jigs, we've got ball head jigs. But I'm talking specifically about a skirted jig, what we considered a jig. This is the jig fishing that we're pretty much talking about. And you've got so many different kinds of jigs. You've got arky jigs, flipping jigs, you've got swim jigs, you've got all these different types of jigs, football jigs. If there's a different day of the week, you've got a different jig for it. And I want you to take all of that, ball it up, and throw it out the window. You don't need any of it, okay? There is no rule that says you have to use a football jig here or a flipping jig there. No. Now, while they are niche designs and work incredibly well in certain situations, you don't need all that. We're going to keep everything basic. You can go out and you can get a casting jig or an arky jig like this, or you can use a flipping jig, whatever. About the only thing I would really rule out is a football jig, because a football jig is kind of niche. All right. You can even use a swim jig for this if that's what you have. A lot of these techniques will work great with a swim jig, something you can cast out there into cover, something that's going to sink to the bottom, and something that you can work, because a jig technique is a bottom technique. A swim jig is going to be the exception, but like I said, we are whittling all that out. We're talking about a bottom technique with a jig that's got a trailer on it. That's all we care about. We don't really care about what type of jig. We don't really care about what type of trailer. We're going to get into all of that later, but that's all we care about right now is tying a line on a jig and throwing it out there and catching fish. So don't get caught up in all the different variables, all the different types of jigs that there are out there. Focus on ones that you can just put a jig on. You can put a trailer on it and you can just flip it out there. You can just cast it out there and catch fish. So tune out all that noise. Now, if I'm fishing from the bank, I'm going to keep it small. I'm going to go with something like this little Strike King. This is a little bitsy bug, right? Everybody loves a Strike King bitsy bug. And if you notice, there's a theme with my colors. It's either going to be a dark color or it's going to be a natural color. I don't need anything else. Those are the terms that I'm looking at, right? We don't need a bunch of this or a bunch of that. We need a dark color or we need a natural color. And think of it in those terms. And when am I throwing each? Well, if I've got some shade, if I've got some clear water and it's cloudy out, or if I have a lot of vegetation in the water and I can see underwater that there's a lot of shade being cast, or if there's some stain in the water and there's some murkiness and I want that contrast, well, I'm going with a darker jig. I'm going with something like this midnight colored jig here. Again, this is available on the website, but I'm going with something like this, and it doesn't matter the depth. I will fish something like this right near the bank. And I've had a lot of great success fishing a dark jig in super clear water right up against the bank because I'm throwing it in those dark shaded areas. I'm throwing it under docks, in laydowns, near rock piles, and I'm having a lot of great success being able to do that. Okay, so first and foremost, like we said, keep it simple. Don't worry about all the jig types. Go buy one that you can tie on and that'll sink to the bottom. Again, the only one that I would really rule out is a football jig, because if you try to fish those up real shallow, you're going to get them gummed up. You're going to get them hung up, with an exception of fishing a riprap bank, because that's kind of what they were made for. Fishing a football jig around a riprap bank about chunk rock, that's what it's made for. But you don't have to have a football jig for that. Again, like I said, we've got a lot of clutter, we've got a lot of noise, and we're weeding that out. So a casting jig or a flipping jig or something like that, or again, even a swim jig, will work just fine. You don't have to worry about that. If it's clear water, if you've got a lot of sun, go with a natural color, right? Like this guy right here. And you can see how beat up this poor jig is. I've had this for a couple of years now, and I can't tell you how many fish I've caught on this, but it's been a lot. And this is in that sundrop color that I like so much. And again, if it's going to be some shade, if it's going to be some murky water, if it's going to be cloudy outside, then I'm just going to go with a darker one. That's all you've got to think about, is natural or darker. Don't think about anything else. So what about trailers? We see all these different types of trailers out there. You've got chunk trailers, you've got craw trailers, and you've got these flipping trailers, and you've got pitching trailers. You got all these different types of trailers for jigs. Tune them out. Use a craw. If you are a novice angler, even if you're an advanced angler, don't worry about all of that. We get all this minutia, right? Well, the water's getting cold, so we don't want a lot of flat. So we want a chunk trailer. Do we want to thread it on? Do we want to just hang it on there? Don't worry about all of that. Use a craw. Go with a craw. Something like this. This is a Strike King Rage craw in a watermelon red color. And again, I'm using this whenever that water's clear, whenever there's a lot of visibility and there's not a lot of shade under the water, when I can have a more natural presentation, a more visual presentation that those bass are going to focus on. Another color, well, obviously, going to be a darker color, right? This is Black Blue Flake. This is a Yum Christie craw. You say lowbrow, that thing's going to have a lot of flap under the water. And when it's cold, the bass don't want that. Don't get caught up in that. Are you swimming it? Are you yanking it as hard as you possibly can across the bottom? All right, then don't worry about the flap. It's not going to have that much flap. If you're moving it nice and slowly across the bottom, like you should be, then you're not going to have to worry about whether it has flap or whether it doesn't have flap. Trust me, the fish aren't that bougie. They do not care. Now, last of all, let's focus on the retrieve, right? Keep it super simple. Cast it out there, let that jig fall to the bottom, and slowly bring it in. Me, I like to work it like a Carolina rig, where I'm got that rod tip right near the water. I've got my rod tip right near the water, and I'm dragging it super slowly, reeling in the slack, dragging it super slowly. That's all you have to do. Don't worry about this picking up stuff. Don't worry about hopping it or ripping it. Don't worry about any of that. Cast it out there, let it sink. Make sure you give it more time to sink than you think it needs to. Let it fall on a slack line before you engage your reel. It's the only thing you have to worry about. Then reel in the slack and slowly drag it. You will feel the vegetation. And a lot of times you can just shake your rod tip a little bit and it'll come right through. It's not going to be that much of a problem. So you can't be any more basic than that. All right, fishing a jig is super easy.
All you gotta do is just cast it out there. Just cast it. Feed it a little bit of line. If you're unsure, you just want it to fall straight down. You don't want it to pendulum back to you. Let it have more time to fall than you think it needs. Reel in the slack and just with your rod tip down. Keep that rod tip low and just gently sweep it. Gently, gently, gently sweep it. I like to give it a few little shakes. I'll feel that vegetation in there and I want to kind of wiggle it through nice and easily. You'll get caught on, you'll feel that vegetation, just kind of wiggle it through and it pops right through the other side. You don't have to worry about it. Especially whenever you're fishing a lake like this where there's vegetation everywhere. So, not a whole lot. You don't want to overwork that bait. Right there, you saw that? That was just me pulling it right through the vegetation. It comes right through. And that's all there is to it. It's super, super easy. The thing about working a jig is you can overdo it. You can just overwork it. You can work it way too fast. You get too fancy with it. Just let it sit there and drag it. Let it fall, let it do its thing, let it sit there, and then just slowly, slowly drag it. That's all you've got to do. That's all you've got to worry about. You don't have to worry about anything else. Just let that bait do its job. Not get in any hurry. Fishing a jig is not exactly rocket science. Super easy. The thing about fishing a jig that a lot of people miss is they get too impatient with it. They get to where they want to work it too hard, too fast. A jig is just essentially a heavier wacky rig, right? And we all know that you've got to be patient when it comes to a wacky rig. Well, you've got to be patient when it comes to a jig as well. That's all there is to it. You learn how to keep that rod tip low. Now you'll see, like I said, a lot of people will want to keep that rod tip up and drag like that. And if you've got a steep bank, if you've got a steep 45 bank where you can maintain bottom contact with that, then that's fine. But on a flatter bottom or a bowl bottom, you're going to end up pulling that bait up and you're going to give it a lot more action than you really want to. So your best bet is to keep that rod tip low and just kind of drag it real slow. That's all you got to do. Slower than you think you need to be going. That's gunk right there. And you'll learn the difference between a bite and a gunk. I can feel plants. Plants don't pull back. They just kind of load up. So give those retrieves a try. Just give it a try. Keep it nice and simple, nice and easy. You won't have any trouble fishing a jig.
Don't worry about what kind of jig it is. Just make sure you can fish it in the shallows and if you can fish it out deep. Just make sure that if you're fishing up shallow, a smaller jig, especially from the bank, will work great. A heavier jig will work a little bit deeper water, but you don't have to get crazy with it. Only 3 sizes that you're going to need are a 1/4, 3/8, and a 1/2. You don't need anything else than that. I don't care if you're fishing 500 feet of water, a 1/2-inch jig is going to get down there plenty fast. So don't have to worry about that. Like I said, those are the only things you're going to have to worry about. Color, keep it light, keep it dark. That's all you need to be thinking about, whether it's light and natural or whether it's dark and has a good contrast. If you have a choice of trailers, obviously, do something like a craw. Again, a Guggen Kraken craw. This is natural. It's got a little bit of chartreuse on it, but that's not why I bought it. I bought it because it's got that natural color to it. Rage craw, natural color, and then this Christie craw if I need a dark trailer. I'm not worried about flap or no flap. I'm not worried about threading it on. I'm not worried about just hanging it on. Craw trailer, put it on your hook, throw it out there, let it drop, slowly drag it. I like to keep my rod tip down because then I'm maintaining bottom contact. That's all you've got to do. You'll start getting bites because a lot of times we get cutesy with it. We get fancy with it. And that's where we have our downfall. We get out of where we need to be. We tend to make things too complicated. And when we make too complicated things, we get frustrated. We get frustrated and we stop working a jig. Keep it simple. Start catching fish. Start building confidence in catching fish with those jigs and watch what happens from there. Don't make it complicated on yourself. Don't worry about all these things you got to have. 1 or 2 jigs, that's all you got. Quarter ounce, 3/8, 1/2. Light color, natural color, dark color. That's all you have to worry about. And just craw trailers. Keep it super simple. And I'm telling you, you're going to go out there and you're going to start catching way more fish than you thought you could. So there you have it. A super simple way to build confidence in jigs and catch fall bass. And it doesn't just work in the fall, but it works all year round. But fall fishing was made for using jigs. Don't let it get complicated. Don't let it get away from you. Thanks for watching Lowbrow Fishing. We'll catch you in the next one.